When I started in 1960, I was allocated. There was a big intake of technical staff every year in those days. I suppose there were about 10 new technical staff on the intake for that year, and I was one of them. And we were all allocated to a member of scientific staff, and the chap I was allocated to was Neil Brown, and he worked in Dr. Hawking's laboratory, room 138, and that's where I started. And I didn't know anything about anything really. I went in there, and at that time I hadn't got my A-level results yet, so I went in as what they called then a junior technician, was about the lowest of the low, which was fine. I didn't mind that, and Neil Brown taught me what he wanted me to do. I could do it. It was animal work, you know, looking after the mice, doing injections. I don't suppose I was meant to do it. Taking smears of blood 3 times a week, passaging the trypanosome strains. It was trypanosomiasis that I was working with, I should have mentioned that. The department that Hawking ran was called chemotherapy, and the work that they were doing was tropical disease research, and there was malaria, trypanosomiasis, bilharzia, that sort of thing. We were all a bit anxious about catching, well, I was anxious about catching trypanosomiasis, and there's a nice little story about that which I might have told you before, but I'll tell you again. We, about once a month I suppose it was, we used to take a blood smear of our own blood to see whether we'd become infected or not. And we all used to do this at the same time, so there was one morning where we'd all be looking at our smears, and we had a head technician there. There was Ken Gamage, but the head technician we were working with at this time was a chap called Les Hild. He was a lovely chap, Les. And he'd also done a smear, and we got an infected rabbit smear, which would be about the right level of infectivity for a human, and we substituted it for Les's slide. And then we all sat around with the microscopes, we were all looking at our slides, and we were watching Les, and old Les was there, you know, just strolling through the fields of blood cells, and suddenly he sort of stiffened up and was looking down the microscope, and we didn't keep him in agony for very long, because he was an old chap, Les. We wouldn't want to cause a heart attack or anything like that. But yeah, we were all, I was worried about getting trypanosomiasis. I thought I'd got it quite a few times, you know, get a headache or something like this is one of the symptoms. Well, you know, you'd start getting headaches straight away. But we were pretty safe. I was working with trypanosomiasis rhodesiense and gambiense. They were quite tricky to catch. You would really need to have it injected into the blood. If we'd been working with Trypanosoma cruzi, which I think was one of the South American strains, apparently that could penetrate the skin. So if you spilled blood on the skin, then that would. But we weren't working with that. So yes, I didn't catch it anyway. Well, I think we were all very careful with what we did. The health and safety executive didn't exist in those days, but we knew that what we did was potentially dangerous, and we were extremely careful what we did. But we did mouth pipetting of all sorts of things carefully. I mean, the precautions were taken. If you were mouth pipetting, all the pipettes had cotton wool, non-absorbent cotton wool at the top, or was it absorbent? I've forgotten which one it is now, whichever one you want, so that if anything did get sucked up, it would be absorbed before it got to you with a bit of luck. But no, we were quite careful about what we did, and we knew about the dangers of ether and chucking it down the sink, and we didn't do these things if we could avoid it. Yes, it was potentially dangerous, but life's dangerous. Crossing the road is dangerous. I'm not particularly enamoured with health and safety regulations nowadays. I think HSE stands for How to Stop Everything, and but I was chairman of the safety committee latterly, so I had to toe the line, which we all do.